Moses Sanders Dam and the lake level destruction on Lake Ontario. Moses Sanders Dam and the destruction of all kinds of property on the St. Lawrence Seaway from water that goes up and down and up and down and up and down, just like on Lake Ontario. Now, my question to the governor of the state of New York and the lawyers that represent Basil Sagos, where they're suing the International Joint Commission for the up and down, up and down, up and down waters on Lake Ontario, precisely what is the difference between Lake George property destruction and Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence Seaway property destruction? I'd like the fund for Lake George and the Lake George Association and the Lake George Park Commission and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to explain the difference between the up and down, up and down, up and down waters on Lake Ontario that are causing all kinds of property damage and destruction of docks and parks and boathouses and shoreline. What's the difference between the dam at Ticonderoga, New York, and the Moses Sanders Dam? Isn't it simple, Governor Cuomo? The water goes up, the water goes down, the water goes up, the water goes down, and the shoreline property owners pay the bill. Like Clifford and Anita Witham at Harris Bay during the years 1965 to 1970, when the International Power Company, International Power and Paper, were using Lake George with the state of New York, Governor Cuomo. The state of New York controls Dam 230, and the state of New York has been controlling Dam 230 since 1957. So, again, Governor Andrew Cuomo and Basil Sagos and your lawyers, precisely what is the difference between the property destruction on Lake Ontario and the destruction of Clifford and Anita Witham's marina on Lake George with the up and down, up and down, up and down waters? Now, folks, here's the difference. International Power and Paper and the village of Ticonderoga, New York, were flushing huge amounts of shit into the front of Fort Ticonderoga. They were flushing their giant septic tank, the Lachute, the Poop Chute Lachute River. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all the information that you could possibly ask for is linked down below. And again, I'm going to ask Governor Andrew Cuomo precisely what is the difference between Clifford and Anita Witham's marina being destroyed 5 years in a row and all that property destruction on Lake Ontario. And to all the news media in Glens Falls, New York at the Post-Star, and all the Warren County Board of Supervisors, and Senator Betty Little, and Senator Dan Steck, and Mr. Charlie Schumer, and Miss Stefanik, and all the other witnesses to the up and down, up and down, up and down waters of Lake George and Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Why is it okay to destroy the Witham family marina year after year after year after year after year, destroying my mother and father's lives? So for anyone at all that has any brain cells that actually function, I would very much appreciate an answer. Why is it that the property owners on Lake Ontario are any more important than Clifford and Anita Witham? I don't know, maybe the Warren County Board of Supervisors and the town of Queensbury. Maybe John Stowe would like to answer this question. Why don't you give it a shot, town of Queensbury? The Lake Ontario destruction versus the Lake George property destruction. Exactly what is the difference? Folks, I think you're catching my point here. Governor Cuomo and Basil Sagos, I want the Witham property returned. I want the Witham property returned, and I want the state of New York to pay damages, along with the international power and sewage flushing, the sewage flushing operations of the state of New York. And Basil Sagos and Governor Cuomo, I have so many records that prove that Lake George is being flushed, and Lake George is being used to flush the sewage of Ticonderoga. There's truckloads of it. There's truckloads of this evidence and proof. So for everyone that's been following this story, particularly the International Joint Commission and the court in which this case is in, Clifford and Anita Witham were destroyed in 1965, 1966, 1967, 1968, and again in 1969, causing them to lose 600 acres on Harris Bay, their marina, their home, and now the state of New York owns 550 acres of their property. The state of New York owns it. Richard Bartlett and Robert Stewart with the Lake George Association. Robert Stewart and Richard Bartlett of Bartlett, Pontiff, Stewart, and Rhodes came sweeping in after the destruction of the Witham family marina by international power and sewage, international sewage flushing, and the Poop Chute River Mafia destroyed the Witham family marina 5 years in a row with their up and down water with dam 230. Exactly like what's being done with the Moses Sanders Dam. So Governor Cuomo, this is a claim. I'm filing this claim against the state of New York for damages to the Witham family, and we want it paid. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm leaving it right there. As always, hasta la vista, and I guess have a Merry Christmas.